This is Corey Willis with PPEI, and you're listening to the Diesel Podcast.
I'm Adam Blattenberg from Diesel World.
Hi, this is Dan, owner of Dan's Diesel Performance.
I'm Christian Roth of BD Diesel.
I'm Braden Fleece, and you're listening to the Diesel Podcast.
What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. Today we're going to be chatting with Matt Santjer from Santjer Performance, and he was on the podcast not too long ago and telling us about his billet input shaft for the 47 and 48 RE trucks and how they've taken that transmission platform to a new level by eliminating, the shafts breaking. So we wanted to catch up with him on that, see how things have been going. And then also we had seen on his Instagram that he has a BMW 335D and it's approaching about 1,000 horsepower. So we wanted to ask him about BMW diesels, that car, the platform, how well it is in stock form, and then what it can be done in the aftermarket, how easy it can be to pick up some extra power and just have fun with the car. So really excited to be able to chat with him about that. Before we get to the podcast, though, we want to encourage you guys, if you're listening to us on any of the podcast apps out there, make sure you head on over to YouTube and search the Diesel Podcast and subscribe to us there. We've got a lot of extra information with videos, installs, how-tos, things like that our guests have that we can't necessarily post on a podcast because there's video that goes along with it. And there's also a lot of really great conversation that happens in the comment sections, whether that's, fellow enthusiasts or people that are, they had a similar issue with their truck and how they went about figuring it out, getting the truck back up and running. So it's a great place to be able to see discussion, other enthusiasts. And if you have any show suggestions, you can leave them right on our YouTube videos as well. We are always looking at them and get a lot of great ideas from you guys there. All right, let's get to the podcast with Matt and learning more about BMW diesels. Matt, welcome back to the Diesel Podcast. I'm excited to be able to catch up with you. Our first episode we did about your input shaft has been it's got a lot of reach, and I keep seeing that input shaft all over the race world. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah, certainly. I appreciate you having me back on. It's definitely good talking to you again, and look forward to going over a few things with you.
Yeah, I wanted to start with the 47-48 RE input shaft and ask you how that's been since, I think you were on maybe less than a year ago, but it's been a little bit, and see what you've been working on with that and how everything's been going.
Yeah. So it's coming up on 2 years now since we had that 37 spline solid input shaft released, and we really couldn't ask for a whole lot more, honestly. The results have been really, really good. Haven't had a single broken shaft ever. There's hundreds of extremely abusive trucks out there across the country beating on them day in and day out, and to not have a single broken shaft, that's pretty incredible. I figured, honestly, that at some point there'd be some sort of out of my control catastrophic failure that took out something, but still going strong 2 years later with absolutely zero broken shafts. So that's pretty awesome. All in all, for a new product release, especially one that's substantially different than the OEM configuration. We've just been really, really happy with the results, and only made a handful of really minor revisions. And yeah, really couldn't ask for a whole lot more with it. We're really happy.
It's been really cool to see the rest of the transmission industry from converter companies just embrace it, and how many options people have. And I think you'd mentioned that on the last podcast we did, is the tremendous reception you had out there to these companies being able to accommodate this different design and how they've done it. And it seems like every day when I'm on Instagram and I see whether it's like a UCC truck or DPC or anything like that, if they've got a 47 or a 48, they've got your input shaft in it. Yeah,
we've certainly had a ton of support from the converter manufacturers. They've been extremely, extremely helpful. It's definitely, without converters to support it, it'd be tough to get them out there and have options for guys to run. So we've been really lucky to have everybody come on board and support it and build converters for us, because that's been a major hurdle to overcome, and definitely glad that they decided to go that way.
I know for our listeners on YouTube that are going to see your podcast cover, we've got a BMW on there, and we were chatting the other day. I was talking to you. I think a lot of diesel enthusiasts have this moment or time as well where, we've got the truck, it's where we want it to be, and maybe we're looking for a second or a third vehicle or something like that, and we don't want to give up not having a diesel. And you were telling me about your BMW diesel, and people who are diesel enthusiasts are going to know and have seen your dyno graphs and things like that. But I wanted to ask you, just like right at the beginning, if nobody's even familiar with the kind of, performance potential that they have about these 335Ds.
Yep. Yeah. So I've obviously been a diesel enthusiast for the past 15 years or so, and obviously I've kind of focused primarily on the Cummins truck side of things. But as far as the BMWs go, about 4 years ago, I got a hold of the first one, and since then have really taking a liking to them. Maybe even more so than the Cummins, but that depends on the day. They're extremely capable. Little 3-liter inline 6 aluminum block motors that there's really nothing else out there like them. By far my favorite platform is the E90 335D sedan that you'd mentioned. They still have them available in the all-wheel drive X5 SUVs, but they're larger, heavier. I think they weigh around 1,400 pounds more. So you're not going to have same power to weight ratio as you do with these with the sedans. So they're definitely very unique. I mean, it's really the only diesel car available in the U.S. with a huge aftermarket performance potential when set up correctly. I mean, the E90 sedan chassis itself is a pretty well-proven chassis that can be set up easily for just about any sort of racing you want to do. I mean, road course, autocross, drag racing. I mean, you can do all of it pretty well and daily drive the car, and you're comfortable. I mean, it's a really solid, well-handling chassis. It's a rear-wheel drive, so it's you basically get a good handling rear-wheel drive car. The 3-liter inline 6 common rail diesel engine. It's like a little 3-liter Cummins with a lightweight aluminum block. I mean, there's not a whole lot to not like about that.
Well, I know when you were telling me about it, I was like, oh, cool. So what years do I got to look at? And there's only 3 years that it's been available, and I think it's had a limited amount were imported, so it's not like they're everywhere. So you do have to kind of take some time and be patient and try to find one. Yeah, so it's basically 2009, 10, 11 are the 3 years that they had the USA or North American spec 335D, and then for 2009, 10, 11, and 12, they also had the X5 SUV. So they had a few extra years that you can get the all-wheel drive SUV, and they didn't make them. They still had that same engine in the 2013s also, but I'd probably try to stick with the 09 through 12 for the SUVs and the 09 through 11 for the sedan. There's some ECM differences with the 2013 on the SUVs, so I kind of try to hold off on them. They're a little different, so it's a kind of an oddball in between year before they changed over to the N57, as in Nancy 57, which is the newer generation 6-cylinder that comes in like the 2014 and up SUVs, where on the 2014 up sedans it was a 4-cylinder. So you didn't have the option in the newer platform to get a 6-cylinder in the lightweight sedan. So
It's you are limited to the years, unfortunately, and there wasn't really a ton of them made, but there's enough of them out there. You can find them. So
one of the things that grabbed my attention with it was they look, just the styling, it pulls in a lot of people. It's classic, it's sleek, it looks good, and especially, if we're thinking of a sedan, it's like, BMW is one of the first that a lot of people think of. But then it was, I think, a dynograph you posted, and then after that it was some engine pictures, and I didn't have any idea the kind of power you could make with these things. And I wanted to ask you about that particular part with your car, is what kind of modifications are available, what things are you doing to be able to help that market, and what kind of power ranges are these engines capable of?
Well, so there really we haven't had any sort of internal failures, and we've really started pushing the limits on these little 3 liters over the past year or so. We've really made some leaps and bounds improvements as far as so taking a step back, there's been decent tuning, and you're basically get rid of all the emissions equipment, do your deletes, get a tune, your intake, exhaust, all your basics. That stuff that's been around for quite a while. But everyone seemed to be, I don't know, kind of stuck in that sub 500 horsepower range. You can get over 400 horsepower with a bunch of water methanol and different things, and which wouldn't recommend with the methanol. But in the past year or so, the tuning has definitely improved dramatically. You can, even with just your basic intake, exhaust, tune, stock turbo, stock fuel system, everything, you can still make over 400 horsepower really reliably. And then taking the next step further, really got to address the fuel system. So they've got a high pressure common rail system like all the trucks. So you got a single CP3 to begin with, and we've built a dual CP3 setup, and S&S is working. We've been working with S&S to supply 100% over injectors for them, and that setup has worked extremely well together. That with just the fuel system and a good size shot of nitrous and with the stock turbos, when we made around 700 horsepower and cracked over 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, and so we went 106 mile an hour in the 8 so far, the full weight car, which is right in line with that average 700 horsepower range. So that's been stock internals, stock everything, stock bottom end, and that was completely stock turbos as well. Just a good fuel system, and relying on nitrous with the stock turbos. So now we're taking the next step further, trying to make that power without nitrous. And so we've been building a triple turbo setup for adding a third turbo in compound with the factory atmospheric turbo. They're twin turbo to begin with. Well, they're like a bi-turbo configuration. And so there's a small turbo, both exhaust housings coming off of the exhaust manifold, bypass valves on the hot and cold side, and we're basically running the additional third turbo in compound with the larger factory turbo, and we've made almost the same power we were making with a ton of nitrous without any nitrous, and that was with no external wastegate of any sort, which is what we've been working on recently, which is really starting to unlock the key to success with these things. I think we're really making some good improvement and on our way to cracking that 1,000 horsepower mark. So
And where do they start out with as far as factory horsepower and torque ratings?
bone stock, they're in the, I think they're under 300 horsepower in the 275 range, and uh, a little over 400 something foot-pounds of torque. So I mean, they're making a lot more power than factory, yeah. And they're holding up. They're holding up really well. I mean, in comparison, I mean, they're holding up better than the Cummins motors. I mean, for as much power as they're making. I mean, we'd be having rod failures and other internal failures at this point with the Cummins. So it's been we've been really happy with how far we've been able to push them so far. And I would assume at some point we will have some sort of internal failure. We need to make a set of rods for them. And I mean, I think that'll add another layer of safety to the equation. But until we have a set fail, and keep pushing it. So
that's what
don't fix what ain't broke, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's something that's so interesting because you can, I mean, even at 275 and a little over 400 foot-pounds of torque for a four-door sedan, that's not bad when you look around, you know, what else is out there. But then when you think of a tune and you're hitting 400 horsepower and then with some fuel system upgrades and you're now getting to 700, and then what you're working on now, it's almost like those old days of, you know, in the diesel truck world, where it was, you get a truck, you put, you know, these things on it, and now you take it from 245 horsepower or 325 to now you're making 800 or 900, but you still have, you know, at least so far, you know, you're not digging into an engine build and a transmission build and all these other things where, you know, where the car was at about 700 horse. And it's just, it reminds me of the early days of diesel truck modifications, and that's what pulled me in and got me asking questions. And I see there's other people, you know, in the industry that have these cars and are doing stuff and what you're doing with them, and it's like, I need to pay attention to these a little bit. And they're not that expensive, you know, when you have to find one out there that doesn't have a ton of miles and you know, something that wasn't used as a work truck, you know, it was probably a commuter vehicle or something. So it's just, I mean,
the price of them's coming down a lot. I mean, they were $55,000 cars to begin with. I mean, now you can get them in the $8,000 to $12,000 range, depending on options and condition and mileage. I mean, realistically, like if you wanted to have a daily driver, a weekend track car, I mean, you could get one, have well under $15,000 in it and go race like 770 index at one of the local diesel events. And then what we plan on doing this year is run 670 index. I mean, you have to put some more money into the car. I mean, everything's not cheap to go fast, but it's the next step. It's still a lot cheaper to build. It would still be a lot cheaper to build a 670 index car through 35D than a 670 index truck by far. And you don't have to have a cage, and you can still run 670 index, or a roll bar. So that's kind of cool because there's a little loophole in the NHRA rule book that allows us to, being that it's a production car newer than 08, I think, still retains all the factory safety equipment and airbags and seat belts, then you're good to go. So it's definitely I think we'll see more and more of them at the diesel truck events in the coming years. So it's pretty cool. I'm excited about it.
Well, once I started looking around and chatting with some people, I didn't realize how they'd kind of caught on, I was chatting with the editor at Diesel World magazine, and he's like, yeah, I have one and I love it. And I'm a huge enthusiast of it, and there's some other guys that have them, and so it's almost like a hidden gem, and that's why I really wanted to do an episode chatting about it, because I have very little knowledge, if any, on it. And I don't know how many listeners out there we have that may have seen them but just didn't know what they could do. And it's fun, especially for like the initial investment, the price of the vehicle, and then what's coming up for them. And gosh, like who knows a year from now what you're gonna have out, what some new failure points maybe with the engine or something like that you guys are gonna have solutions for. That it's gonna be a really fun platform.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's got a ton of potential, and we'll just keep progressing along. I mean, we're making huge improvements really quick in comparison to prior years, where it seemed like the performance market for these things kind of got to a stagnant point and really wasn't improving much. So we're definitely happy to get things moving again, and I think there's going to unfortunately probably get more and more difficult to find in good condition, but that's the nature of the beast. As more people come across them, they're gonna, I don't know, definitely get a little difficult to find. I mean, they're already kind of at that point to find ones that are in your area. I mean, you can almost always travel a little bit and get a hold of one, though. So they're not outrageously difficult to find, put it that way.
This kind of leads into yesterday on Instagram, we posted up that you were going to be on and what we're going to be chatting about, and it got some questions from some followers that we have. And one of the ones that we had was just that. And he said, what should I look for in buying a used one? So what are some tips you would give somebody that jumps on a website and is looking for 335Ds?
Oh, well, so I mean, there's a handful of different packages you can get. There's basically the standard base model, you got the sport package, and then an M Sport package. It's basically the sport and the M Sport package have some decent improvements. I mean, you got some nicer seats, steering wheel, nicer lower suspension, nicer tires and wheels, a handful of cosmetic differences, different bumpers, and so I mean, they definitely look better. It's probably worth it to try to find something with a sport package, or if you can find one with the M Sport package, even better. They're a lot harder to find. I've managed to stumble across 2 of them so far, but picked both of those up and added them to the collection. But if you can't find one that's got a sport package or an M Sport package, I mean, the base model ones are still fine. As far as the drivetrain and powertrain, it's all the same. There's motor and transmission is the same. There's no differences there. So I mean, it's stuff that you can, if you really want any of the specific upgrades, you can get the stuff individually. So you really don't have to worry too much about that. Just trying to find one that's overall in good condition. It seems like it's been taken care of. Depending on, it's getting to the point now that there's probably quite a few of them that have had either some sort of emissions issues at some point and had that stuff removed, which would be ideal to find ones like that that's already had all your emissions deletes and whatnot. Particularly the carbon blasting. I mean, that's kind of it's a bit of a nuisance. But like I said, there's quite a few of them that have probably been done already. They do like a walnut shell media blast on the intake ports to clean up all the carbon buildup from the EGR soot and crankcase vent mist, the oil mist. It definitely, it's an awful combination. Kind of plagued these things with plugged up intake ports over the years. So you can find one that's already been taken care of, I mean, a lot of them were done under warranty at the dealership. I mean, that walnut blasting procedure. I mean, it's done in the car with the head and everything on. It's I don't know, probably a day's worth of work realistically. So it is what it is. If you do it once, you never have to worry about it again, as long as all the emissions stuff is gone.
As far as mileage, like how much would be too much mileage in your opinion for a used one that someone may see out there?
It'd be, I mean, in my opinion, I'd if I'm going to keep one for a long time, I'd like to find one with 100,000 miles or so. But realistically, I've seen ones with well over 200,000 miles and 300,000 miles that they're running like a Cummins. I mean, so if you find one with a really high highway miles, I wouldn't be scared of it. I mean, you can get it as long as the price is right for it. I definitely wouldn't shy away from it. I mean, I think that you got to pay what it's worth for it, and I mean, they're good, reliable cars. Honestly, I mean, it's kind of hard to go wrong with them. And seems like a lot of, in comparison to like, say like an M3 or something, they're going to get beat on a lot more than just the typical person that was going to buy that car from the beginning, and they're going to buy it to drive it and beat on it. Where I think a lot of the 335Ds were bought more as commuter cars, like just the comfortable daily driver, and they weren't really beat on from the get-go. So they're in, a lot of them are in pretty good shape to begin with, in comparison to like, say like an M3 or something that has been thoroughly abused since day one.
Yeah, it's almost, I think, just from the diesel truck side, is that something, when we're looking at a used vehicle, we're kind of accustomed to that, like, what's been done to it, how was it used, that sort of stuff. And it's almost like with this, there is no, in general, it's not like a truck where it's being used to haul things and tow a lot and all that sort of stuff. It's just a completely different, almost demographic that would buy this platform. And so it's, when you get one, it's like, it's just so different. And just the ones I've seen browsing around, I'm like, this one's got 82,000 miles. It looks like it was parked in a garage its whole life. And wow, this is different than looking at, a 10-year-old truck.
Yeah. 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 You'll find, honestly, the ones that were babied the most and driven back and forth to the grocery store, going 35 miles an hour, they have the most issues from a carbon buildup standpoint. And once you get that addressed, I mean, the rest of the car was had a pretty mild previous life before you got a hold of it. So everything should be fairly fresh. I mean, that's kind of what we've seen with them. That seems like the worse condition they are from a carbon buildup standpoint. It's not necessarily a bad thing, I guess. It kind of indicates that it had a very easy early life. Because I mean, the harder it's driven, the less the buildup it is. I mean, it's as non-intuitive as it seems. It seems like the ones that are grocery getters are kind of the problematic ones. So
this next question, I think you touched on it in the beginning with the year ranges, but the person had asked what year engine code is best for power and reliability, which would go back to that 2009 to 11 car, maybe into the 12 with the X5. But just to touch a little bit on the 4-cylinder ones, is the performance potential just entirely different with those versus the 3-liter inline 6?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a smaller displacement 4-cylinder. I mean, I don't think they're not bad engines at all. I mean, they're going to be good reliable engines, good commuter car. It's just they're not going to have the power potential that a 3-liter inline six is going to have. And they're still, I mean, they're still newer. They're more expensive. So at this point, there's not as many people really tearing into them and trying to make a bunch of power with them. So I would say at this point, if I was to recommend a year range for people to look at that are wanting to get into something fairly cost effective for the performance side of things, I mean, the 09, 10, 11, 335D is definitely what I would recommend starting with. I mean, they're going to be much more cost effective and have about much better potential as far as power output, and there's more available for them. There's the newer ones have CP4 injection pumps as opposed to the much more proven CP3s. So that's actually something on our to-do list is a CP3 conversion for the newer platforms that have the CP4s. So we had quite a few requests for that in the past few months. So definitely something that's needed, and people are starting to want to push them a bit more and looking for options. So it's good that I mean, it sucks that they don't make the 3-liter inline six anymore in the sedans, but at least they still make something. I mean, and you can still get the X5s with the 6-cylinder. So there's still hope. I mean, there's a little bit depressing that they don't have anywhere near the diesel market that like the European countries have. There's tons of options for every make and model over there, but it's kind of slim pickings over here. So working with what we got.
This other question we got, it goes back to your setup on your car. And the person had said, what are you going to do about the back pressure in the manifold? And I know you touched on that a little bit with that's the next step you're taking. But I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, and this would apply even to Cummins trucks or really any diesel vehicle, is how being able to control that helps with power.
Yeah, so it's that's definitely a good point. You absolutely have to be able to address exhaust pressure. I mean, and we tried to see how far we could push it, and we made in the 600 horsepower range with absolutely no external wastegating around the factory turbos, just adding the additional third turbo and compound. But we were hitting a exhaust pressure limit that was definitely the restricting aspect for us. So then we built an external wastegate setup, have it tied back, electronically controlled by the ECM to work work seamlessly with the factory control system for the bypass valve and changeover on the hot and cold side of the stock turbos. So you definitely got to make sure everything is working seamlessly together. You're not going to have any strange power ranges or RPM, so where it just you want a very seamless changeover, obviously. So we've been able to use the factory manifold and the EGR port coming off the front. So we're feeding that to an external wastegate and controlling that electronically. So that's working out really well, and we're still kind of dialing things in with that. But we'll be posting some results from that here shortly, and hopefully plan on having the car out at Rudy's for the Outlaw Diesel Super Series coming up here soon, as well as a local event, Truck Wars here in North Carolina. So that should be a good time. we'll get to kind of debut things, and that'll be the first time we've had the car out at the at any events with the new triple setup. So pretty excited about that.
That was going to be the next thing I asked you is, people are listening like, wow, I want to see this 1,000 horsepower BMW. Is where can they find your updates and stuff like that on social media or website or anything like that for us to see, what the car is doing, and then, just see as things progress. Maybe it's even with, some other BMW diesels or other things that you guys are doing.
I think search on Facebook and Instagram at Santjer Performance Development, and try to keep. We're not as active as I would like to be on there, but we try to at least keep some somewhat regular updates, and we'll definitely try to get some more information up here on the triple turbos here soon. We've been pretty quiet about them, trying to just focus on development and making progress, but we'll be posting some stuff here soon. I know we've got quite a few guys itching to see some results and get on the pre-orders list. So it's been pretty exciting. Definitely ready to get it out there and build a few more kits for some customers. So they're pretty cool.
It's always really fun to chat with you, Matt, and learn more about what you're working on, and then also, to stay on top of that 4748 RE input shaft, which for well over a decade was sort of the issue with those things, is at a certain power level, just, they're being kind of hit and miss reliability, and whereas now it's like there's a solution and there's tons of people running them. So it's always a pleasure to chat with you, and, you inspired me to, kind of look out there and think about something like this, and it's really appealing. And over the years, people have asked us to do episodes on diesels other than what's in a pickup truck, and once I saw the performance potential and the things that are out there, I'm like, man, I got to get Matt on to talk about this platform.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate you having me on. It's been really good talking to you, and definitely keep you up to date, and maybe you'll end up picking up a diesel BMW here soon. I know you seemed like you were showing a little bit of interest last time we talked, so
you'll see we got a pre-order list for something.
Yeah, hopefully it influenced you a little bit. Make some hasty decisions and get one picked up.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to YouTube and search the Diesel Podcast and subscribe to our channel there. You'll get our episodes first. There's also exclusive content that's there, and a lot of great information that's in the comment sections. And if you have an idea for a show, feel free to leave it on any one of our episodes. Let us know what you'd like to hear, and we'll get that episode going for you guys. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.